The Jefferson County Historical Commission is pleased to provide our second Hall of Fame award to Linda Kirkpatrick. Linda has been an extraordinary volunteer in the Evergreen community. We are proud to honor her with the Hall of Fame award. We are recognizing her for her energy and enthusiasm around organizing and funding volunteer community groups and for her efforts to preserve our spectacular Western landscape. So Linda, tell us, what brought you to Evergreen?
You know, I didn't have a whole lot to say about it. I married my husband in 1981 and he brought me there, and it was a wonderful experience. And I owe so much to him for encouraging me to be involved.
Speaking of which, what has motivated you to volunteer in the community?
You know, I had a soft spot in my heart for volunteer ambulance workers. And there was an article in the paper that made me aware of the need for volunteers. And I called and I said, I'd be glad to volunteer, but as it turned out, they couldn't accept anybody who wasn't medically trained as an EMT or paramedic. So they allowed me to attend meetings, and I had explained that I had some fundraising background. So I proposed that they come up with a building for themselves to house the ambulances and to allow the volunteers to have a place to stay in snowstorms so they could be readily available. And I ended up coordinating that project in 1983 and for 2 years. And it involved acquiring land and taking it through the rezoning process and raising $150,000 from the community in 2 years. And then we did a barn raising, an old-fashioned barn raising, and that was pretty exciting. The community really got behind it. And although I only knew 5 people when I started out, 5 people in the community, 3 of them lived in the same house with me. By the end of 2 years, I felt like I was pretty well acquainted in the community.
Wonderful. So it appears that you were involved in a number of land preservation efforts. How did that come about?
Well, somebody I met during the ambulance campaign was approached to chair an effort to save Noble Meadow, which was a real gem of the community, open space land that was slated for development. It was 408 acres, and they planned 238 homes on that. And he approached me and said, would you co-chair this with me? And I did. And that started me with being interested in preserving open space. It was quite an effort. It was the first project for the Mountain Area Land Trust that had formed in the early 90s. And they'd been very quiet about things and didn't want publicity until they had their first project. And this was it, and it was really a very ambitious first project for any land trust. So it was 408 acres, and it involved convincing Evergreen Parks and Rec to buy their first ever parcel of land. And on that, they put the Buchanan Rec Center and built ball fields. And it required going through the first successful bond issue after the Tabor Amendment was put into effect in the 90s. And we voted as a community to tax ourselves and had a 96% approval rate, if you can believe that.
That's impressive.
It is. The community really got behind it. But it also involved convincing Jefferson County Open Space to pay more for land that they had already refused to buy several months earlier. But it was an important part of it, and we had only 5 months to accomplish this.
Oh my gosh.
It also involved collecting $200,000 from the community. And that was what made the difference with Jefferson County Open Space. When the community would put money into it themselves, the Open Space Commission would back it too. So we had 5 months to raise $2.3 million, which was quite a feat.
Wow.
We actually did it in 4.5 months, and we refunded some money to people who donated after we reached our goal, and we're to this day the only organization that ever turned down a grant from a well-known Colorado foundation who offered to put us over the top. So it was a wonderful experience of community spirit and getting behind things.
It sounds fabulous.
The publicity and associations that were built with that success story led to another opportunity for preserving some parkland, and that was in Bergen Park. There was 11 acres that were slated for commercial development, and I was approached to see if we could turn that into a park and keep it from being built up with commercial buildings. And so we formed a nonprofit group called the Evergreen Land Community Coalition, and its sole purpose at the time was to protect the land in this one particular area. But somebody in that group had this wonderful vision. He could look down at a map and see that there were only 6 property owners, and if we could convince all of them to sell the land to the community, that we could have a 66-acre park. And I thought that was something that the community could get behind better than just the 11 acres. So I encouraged the group to go for the big project. And it was a small group of committed volunteers that really put a lot of effort into surveying the community and involving them in many ways. And we had to raise $125,000 in 6 months. And maybe that doesn't sound like a bunch right now, but then it was a lot more. And we conducted the first master planning for that property. We didn't acquire it all at once, but in steps. And before the organization dissolved, there was another opportunity. There was 17 acres of land, again slated for commercial development, and in a neighborhood, along the highway, but in a neighborhood. And people thought that might make a really good neighborhood park, and it certainly has. It's become actually the most popular park for Evergreen Parks and Rec. It's called Stagecoach Park.
Oh, lovely. Definitely heard of it.
That,
Well, it also appears that you have had 2 significant publications in the Evergreen area that strongly influence volunteerism. Can you tell us a little bit about Upbeat and your website, justaroundhere.com?
I'd love to. Upbeat was a monthly print publication that was mailed directly to 12,500 homes. And it was really designed to encourage people to get involved in the community. I had such a strong belief about getting involved, and I thought it was a wonderful community, a welcoming community. It was a time when it was growing from, in 1970, there were only 2,700 year-round residents in
Wow.
Evergreen, and it was adding about 10,000 people each decade. So by the turn of the century, it was about 40,000 people in that zip code. Because it's unincorporated, there are no city boundaries and no local government. So whenever there was a need, people just got together to meet that need. And as a result, we had something like 140 nonprofit groups
Wow.
that did things for the community. And so this publication was dedicated to volunteerism and encouraging people to get involved. And then Just Around Here was a similar thing in that it really promoted getting involved, civic engagement and civility. It profiled, it was a weekly publication online, but it profiled a different person or a couple of people each week who had made significant contributions to the community, who were volunteers and good role examples. So over the years, I publicized 500 individuals with profiles about them.
Excellent. What motivated you to co-found Leadership Evergreen?
Well, although I was one of those people who just stepped forward without being asked, didn't have much leadership experience at the time, but the community welcomed me, and I realized that not everybody feels comfortable stepping forward, and leadership really needs to be stimulated and nurtured. And so another fellow and I had attended the 50 for Colorado Leadership Program, and it's a statewide program. And when I graduated from my class, I approached him and said, gee, this would be good for Evergreen. And so in about 1995, we started the first class of 15, and it was designed to take emerging and existing leaders and encourage them to take leadership roles in the community. And ever since then, they've been having a biannual class of 15 students or so.
That is wonderful. Well, and speaking of future generations and classes, what would you say to future generations about why they should volunteer in their community?
Well, I would say get involved. It's a great way to meet people and feel like you're doing something for your community. And I feel that there's so many opportunities for one person to affect change and make a difference. I just feel strongly that
Well, we are delighted with to have you here and to give you the Hall of Fame Award. You've certainly earned it, and the volunteerism that you have experienced and encouraged in other people is just really remarkable. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very honored. Thank you.